This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
Danilo's free, and it goes to Gibbs White.
First time we've seen them attack them, and there's Brandon! Well, that's what I've wanted to see Robinson do. Taylor one, he scores! And the City ground goes ballistic!
Here's Bob Williams, and he's through here! And in the end, Forrest will say it doesn't matter how you play as long as you win it.
Yeah! Forest Sale, Premier League! Hello and welcome to this special episode of Red Side of Trent as we celebrate the second anniversary of our trip to the new Wembley to face Huddersfield Town. Whatever happened to them, eh? In the Championship playoff final after that dramatic penalty shootout win over Sheffield United at the City Ground. It's been a bit of a flat season on the pitch for us overall, but we did finish with a happy ending as we secured our third consecutive season in the Premier League to equal a club record at this level since the Premier League was formed, as we made sure on the last day 100% by beating Burnley 2-1 at Turf Moor. So sit back, relax and watch or listen to stories from fans and special guests as we chat about our famous day under the arch in London. You might even shed a tear on the way. We start with Greg Mitchell, who most of you will know from as a co-founder at Forza Garibaldi, a contributor on the Forest Focus podcast, and also featuring on the Overlap show on Sky Sports. Greg shares with us the Saturday before the game, setting up the Forza banners before the big day, and his experiences on the day itself. To start us off first, Greg, what happened on the Saturday prior to the playoff final?
Oh God, where do you start? We were excited. I remember getting to like the train station all in a Forest gear, ready to go, and nobody was there. Obviously, everyone's travelling down on the Sunday. We all know what happened Sunday morning, but we just had a nice, relaxed journey down and went to check into a hotel. The hotel hadn't got our booking, of course, so we spent about an hour there faffing about. Our mate Faz sorted that out, and that was it, really. So we didn't have that journey of hell that most seem to have had on the Sunday, but it was a weird one. Just the anticipation was there, but there was no one there to do it with you. Yeah,
I remember seeing all them queues at the train station. I mean, I went down on a coach, a minibus, so I didn't have to deal with all that, thankfully. But I mean, you and the guys from Forza had to go through the process of setting up all the displays the evening before the game at Wembley, I believe. I mean, What was the planning like for that?
Oh, it was horrible because we had Art of Football help us for the main banner. Obviously Forest, we had a relationship with Forest, so whenever we did anything with them, they trusted us to an extent, so we could get we knew what cards to buy and this, that, the other, and they're like safety certificates. But the thing with Wembley is they need a guarantee of exactly what you're doing 2 weeks before the event, and 2 weeks before the event we hadn't beat Sheffield United. So we had to make this awful decision to tempt fate and say, this is what we're doing. We're going to order the card. We're going to design the badge, design the banner, and just say we are going to make it. And thankfully, obviously we did. But I remember we ordered all the card, and suddenly 30,000 cards it was just for that one end. It wasn't even our entire section of the crowd. But Wembley turned around and says, "Oh, we need to fire test your card." What? Yeah, so we luckily I think the guy we ordered it off sorted us out and said, yeah, you need this stuff instead, it's fine, and we got that all sorted. And our mate Bors, he had a van and travelled down on the Friday, I think, with a van full of red card, a huge banner, and straight underneath Wembley, and it was there waiting for us when we eventually got into the stadium Saturday evening.
I mean, the officials from Wembley obviously don't know Forest history then in the playoffs. So I'm sure when Sheffield United went 2-1 up on the night at the City Ground, your heart was probably in your mouth a bit more. But thankfully for us all, it come off and we did get that day at Wembley. Just finally, mate, I mean, just what was your kind of plan of action for the day? I know you said you headed down the day before. I mean, and what are just the memories on the actual day, really?
Well, it's like I say, it started before that. So the Saturday evening, I think we had, I can't remember exact amount, it was something like 100 volunteers. And Wembley was strict, but they were used to it. Palace had done displays before, other clubs had done it. So there was a bit of a routine. So it was check-in at Wembley, all get in there. We were in there till about midnight. I got lost on some stairwell, couldn't find. It was a nightmare. There was so many little stories, but we got out of Wembley. It was like, right, let's go for a drink, all in our shorts, and like it's Saturday night in London. You ain't getting in anywhere. We naively was like walking around Mayfair trying to get in. So woke up Sunday morning, no hangover, like reading all the horror stories of what's going on at Nottingham train station, and got to I think it was Marylebone, the sports bar there. Had a few beers, but then had to go and get passes, and so it was a real weird weekend in the sense that we were that busy with the display we couldn't like soak it up. And we got into Wembley, met our kind of, well, what would you call him, kind of minder, really. He was looking after us on the day and making sure we knew, because we weren't just allowed pitch side or anything like we were when we do them at Forest. It was everyone had to be like specifically know where they were. And we'd got the ladies team. I don't know whether people know this actually. So the banners, there was the huge banner, the Forest flag, which Art of Football helped. And then we had the Far Of We Travelled banners. And the ladies team helped us with them. So they were all sat up there and they knew when to unveil it and obviously drag it back up. And as soon as my best memory of the whole day, obviously before the win, was being pitch side, seeing the banner go up, because they played Mull Kintyre really early. It was like 20 minutes before the game or something. And just being there and hearing that and thinking, bloody hell, like this time 6 months ago, you'd never have thought we'd have been here. So, yeah, it's just amazing. And then, obviously, once we won, that was the weird feeling, because the euphoria, the sheer adulate, like the sheer joy and everything that went through it, like hour after the final whistle in the stadium, everyone starts filtering out, and we got on our train at King's Cross, which was a little bit quieter, and just sat on the train thinking, yeah, we're going to party now, going to celebrate like miles into the night, and got into Nottingham, and it was like the party was over. Everyone who'd stayed in Nottingham to celebrate was obviously way too drunk and got home, and we were knackered. So it was just, I think, all about that Monday then in Market Square.
I mean, I regret this. I really, because I stupidly booked working for that Monday because I didn't want to tempt fate and think, oh, if we lose, I'm just going to sat at home all day sulking. So I booked it in, I booked work in, and I had to unfortunately listen to it on the radio. But I mean, obviously I've seen all the stuff on social media and that, and it was amazing. Obviously I was overjoyed at getting promoted, so I could, I could accept it. But I mean, how long on that Saturday at Wembley did it take you, do you reckon, to set it all up and that?
Oh, it was. I mean, we had some good volunteers. It was great. Like even the lads came over from America and who were there and started helping us. Some of our other buddies and people I'd never met and I'll never meet again. But I don't think we got out the stadium till about midnight, and we were there. Well, we were there when it was daylight, so it must have been like 7, 8 o'clock. I can't remember for sure, but when you stand in that empty stadium, you just realise how vast it is. And we were thinking, bloody hell, have we bitten off more than we can chew here? And that's why I'm so glad we went with such a simple design. Next time for the FA Cup final or whatever it is, it'll be a bit more dramatic.
It would be nice. Well, semi-finals nowadays, aren't they? You get there for the semis. So, it is, I think, for any English football. Our next contribution is from Simon Myers. Simon is a Forest fan when it comes to football, but he's also a fan of the Miami Dolphins in American football, in which he does his own podcast on. Simon tweeted in his story to us on our Twitter page, and although it has a really sad start, it does have an happy ending. Thank you for coming on, first of all, Simon. So just start us off with your story before the playoff final in your own words.
Yeah, thanks, Reece.
No problem.
I've been a Forest fan for over 40 years. Lived in the Nottinghamshire, Derbyshire border as a kid, grew up being a Forest fan, moved away, unfortunately, at the time. There was a period when I was a season ticket holder as well, back in the sort of late 1990s. So I've been a Forest fan for 45 years now. And even though I've lived away, I've continued to follow the team through thick and thin. mainly thin, I have to say. There haven't been too many things to cheer about in that time, of course, been outside of the Premier League. But my story goes back to the playoff season. Forest were high flying in 2022, on course for the playoffs, potentially even automatic promotion at that time. And I'd been feeling a little unwell since the turn of the year. And in March 2022, I got diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. So my life was turned upside down completely at that time, from having a blood test to being admitted to hospital for treatment, happened over the course of 3 or 4 days. So things moved really, really fast. I was feeling quite unwell, and the doctor finally diagnosed what was wrong. And the moment I was given the devastating news of my leukemia diagnosis, I was pretty much admitted to hospital straight away. So here we were, coming to the end of a pretty good season, and my life was turned upside down with this diagnosis. So I was admitted for my first course of chemotherapy in March 2022, as I said, and I was in hospital for 31 days receiving treatment. That consisted of 10 consecutive days of twice a day chemotherapy, followed by a period of recovery and convalescence. The reason they needed to keep me in for so long was that the course of chemotherapy I was given pretty much wiped out my immune system. So I was very much prone to infection. And sure enough, I caught an infection in hospital, which was treated with antibiotics. But I was finally allowed home middle of April, as we approached the end of the season. So Forest were doing pretty well. I thought, knowing the condition I had, I thought my chances of seeing Forest for the remainder of that season had been pretty much wiped out. I knew I'd come to and resign myself to the fact that I wasn't going to be able to watch Forest potentially either getting automatic promotion or even any sort of playoff appearance. I was kind of thinking I'm not, unfortunately, going to be able to be a part of that. So I resigned to myself to watching everything on telly, and sure enough, we got to the playoff semi-final. I was really hoping for automatic promotion, of course, and obviously that went by the wayside when we suffered that defeat in Bournemouth, because I was hoping then at least I wouldn't miss out on any potential playoff drama or any Wembley trip. And obviously we subsequently qualified for the playoffs, so I was resigned to watching the Sheffield United 2-leg games on the TV. Kind of bittersweet for me, but because I knew I wasn't going to be able to make the final, I certainly couldn't make the semi-final, so I was watching it on penalties. But my natural reaction took over, and I was absolutely over the moon when we beat them on penalties. And I was jumping around the room with my son, who's a Forest fan, and my brother had come up to watch, who's a fan, and we were absolutely over the moon that they managed to get to a playoff final. So obviously there was a very short period between the semi and the playoff. I was in between treatments. The course of treatment meant that between the periods of March and July, I was in and out of hospital receiving different cycles of chemotherapy. I knew I was going to have 4 different cycles, started in March, finished in July, with periods in between. Fortunately, the playoff final fell between my second and third periods of chemotherapy, I think, going back 2 years now. And because, as I said earlier, one of the side effects of having this sort of treatment is your immune system gets totally wiped out. So I had to be really careful in terms of making sure I didn't get COVID, things like that. But I was gradually recovering, and I felt okay in myself. I was displaying no side effects other than just my body was weakened and I was tired. And the tickets went on sale for Wembley, and because I'm not a current season ticket holder, I knew I wasn't going to get any sort of priority until way down the list. Yes, I'm a member, as is most of my family, but so I needed to wait my turn to see if there were any, to see what my thoughts were, if tickets were in fact available at my sort of membership level. It got to the week of the game, and yeah, there were still tickets available. And I said to my wife, I said, look, I feel okay if we can come to some sort of find a way for me to get to Wembley with avoiding public transport, for example, avoiding large crowds, where I'm less likely to interact with folks and catch either COVID or a cold, or even a cold could have been. It would have taken me a long time to recover from that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And we worked out a way that we drove down in the car, parked on a driveway near Wembley really early. Well, actually, I managed to get tickets, fortunately, I should say. So I was absolutely over the moon. And I thought, you know what, I felt okay physically. This is something that we just can't miss. I would regret it for the rest of my life if I had the opportunity to go and I didn't. So we needed to be careful. We needed to make sure, as I said, I stayed clear of lots of mingling people, like public transport, service stations, crowds. So we parked in a private driveway at Wembley early, got into the stadium early. So we avoided Wembley Way, where everyone was kind of walking. And I thought, well, okay, I got into the stadium, into my seat early. Literally, as soon as the doors opened, I was in, avoiding all the crowds. And obviously, when you get inside, there's like 80, 90,000 people in Wembley, but I'm not literally sat next to 80 or 90,000 people. I had a mask, of course, as well. And I got in my seat, and I was only literally around the sort of people in my area. I was on the end of a row near an exit. So tried to minimize my exposure to potential infection. And I made it. And the rest is history, as you say. I actually had a thoroughly amazing day out watching the team win, of course, and get promoted to the Premier League. I was knackered by the end of it, but I have to say it was one of the greatest days out I've ever had watching Forest. And on reflection, when I got home, I felt really honoured to be part of it, considering at one stage, even my life was at threat in the early days of being diagnosed. And to find myself at Wembley watching the Reds go up was something that, and my son was there to experience it with me, of course, and to share those memories of him. It really was a pick-me-up, if you like. It gave me a bit of a boost in terms of feeling good about myself that I was able to take part in and watching the team win at Wembley. And so it kind of had a happy ending, but I went through the mill to get there, Reece.
I mean, sorry, first of all, for kind of what you had to go through up until, with your chemotherapy and that. But, for you to get that day out, and like you said as well with your son, I mean, just must be so special for you. I mean, what was your like overriding emotions of that day as a whole? Really, I mean, the amount of emotions I can imagine you'd have experienced would have probably been off the scale.
Considering up until the week of the game, I'd resigned myself to not being part of it, to actually be part of it. I was so glad I made that decision to get the tickets and go, because I've seen Forest. I've been lucky enough to see Forest at the old Wembley quite a few times back in the League Cup final days and Simod Cup final days, and that in itself was a hell of an experience. But of course, Forest had never appeared at the new Wembley, and I've been longing for the day that they finally make an appearance at the new stadium. And to think that I was going to miss out on it was just devastating. So to actually be part of it in the end was just an amazing experience. And I have to say, it was probably, whilst the game itself was pretty rubbish,
it was
the fact that we won the game and the noise. I've never known a noise like it at Wembley. It was, I've been lucky enough to see a range of different sporting events. I've watched a lot of American football. I've seen England games. I've been to the States to watch American football and Test cricket, and nothing compared to the atmosphere on that day. It was just so loud and so noisy that I was living off adrenaline for days afterwards. It really boosted me, if you like, and something I'll never forget.
It's so lovely as well that you was going through your chemotherapy and that it gave you that boost as well. Honestly, my palms are all sweaty listening to it, mate. It's a lot. I know it obviously was not a nice start, but it is a lovely kind of ending. I mean, to round it off, you mentioned a story about Stan Collymore. So, did you want to tell that, bud?
Yeah, I'd love to. So, my 50th birthday was in June of that year. So, about a month and a bit later.
What day in June?
25th.
Oh, I'm the 9th, so I was going to see if you say it was me. But carry on, mate.
I was gearing up to spend some time at home for my 50th birthday, and looking forward to that. Unfortunately, I developed an infection, and one of the as I said earlier, this kind of treatment means you are prone to infection, and I got sepsis. Neutropenic sepsis is the official terminology, and they say, look, the moment you start to feel unwell or get a fever or feel tired, just literally present yourself to A&E. And whilst I didn't want to be in hospital for my 50th birthday, I had no other choice. So a couple of days beforehand, I was admitted via A&E at my local hospital. And unfortunately, I was in hospital for my 50th birthday, which was so I had to cancel all the arrangements for that. Now, obviously, my wife and kids were able to visit a couple of times a day. And one of the things that she was looking to do was to, she wasn't sure at that time that she did this, whether I'd be able to have visitors or not. So what she did, you've heard of Cameo?
I've not, but carry on.
So Cameo is an app or a website where you can pay a small sum and get your favorite player or celebrity to send you a personalized message. And my wife Claire, bless her, had contacted Stan Collymore through Cameo and said, look, my husband's really ill with leukemia at the moment. He's in hospital with neutropenic sepsis. Would you mind sending him a get well video for his 50th birthday, or happy birthday if you like, because he's in hospital? And Stan was really, really amazing, I have to say. He wouldn't accept any payment from my wife to do this. He emailed her back and said, look, because she'd given me all the history about how I was a Forest fan and how I'd watched Stan play for Forest. And he said, look, he supported me throughout the time I was at Forest. It's now my time to step up and support him. So I was in hospital on my 50th, and I needed to go down for a chest x-ray to find out potentially what the cause was of my infection. And I was literally on my bed about to go down for an x-ray when my mobile went, and it was this strange FaceTime call from an ID that I didn't recognize at all. You know how you get a call on FaceTime from your loved ones, you know who they are. I didn't have a clue who it was, and I rejected the call because I was literally on the way out of my room down to have my x-ray. So I went down, had an x-ray, came back, had to leave my phone behind. Whilst I was in having my x-ray, Stan was emailing Claire, my wife, and saying, look, I just tried to FaceTime him, but he didn't pick up. And she had to say, oh, he's been admitted to hospital, he's just having an x-ray. So I got back and he'd sent me a really lovely video message on WhatsApp because Claire had given him my number, and I got back to this video message from Stan, which was really, really nice. It made my day, actually, in terms of with it being my 50th birthday. He was so great. He wished me well. He talked to me about Forest and how great it was being a Forest player, and really wanted to boost my spirits by saying some lovely things. And it was really, really personalised as well, Reese, as well. It wasn't like a generic message. He was actually addressing it to me. And the advantage of that is, of course, I've now got something I can keep for the rest of my life as well. So I either could have spoken to him face to face on my phone, but I wouldn't have had anything to show for it at the end other than the memories of a call. But now I've got a voice video message from Stan, which I can obviously keep. And it made such a difference to my day in terms of boosting my spirits, if you like. And I was ever so chuffed that Stan Collymore messaged me, or sent me a message. I actually got his email off my wife, and I dropped him an email afterwards, said, wow, that was amazing, thank you very much, and just gave him an update on my condition, if you like. And didn't hear back from him again, of course, and I had no reason to expect to, but I was just really pleased that he took the time out to not charge my wife for the Cameo fee, but to just send me a personalized message, and even go to the effort of ringing me direct was amazing. So I know Stan's come in for a lot of criticism amongst the years from Forest supporters for various reasons, which we don't need to go into now, of course. But for me, he was one of the greatest players I've ever seen wearing the Garibaldi, and I've got a lot of respect for him after that, and nothing but good things to say about Stan.
Yeah, like you say, you can divide opinion, and we're not going to get into his personal life. But my dad says the exact same as you. He's one of the one of the best players he's ever seen for Forest, the best striker I think he said he's ever seen for Forest. So
Yeah,
for him
absolutely.
to do that, you know, fair play to him. Absolutely lovely to take some time out and say, look, it's not about the money. It's just about making a supporters' day who supported me while I was at the club in the 90s. That's absolutely brilliant of him. That is. Well, I mean, thank you so much for coming on, for doing that, because to tell that story is really brave of you, and I'm delighted for you and your family that you've come through it, mate. All right.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, Reese, it's my treatment finished at the end of July 2022, and I've had no setbacks since then. I need
Brilliant.
to undergo 2 years of monitoring with bone marrow tests every 3 months, and I'm approaching the end of that period now. So hopefully, touch wood, I've got one more potential bone marrow test to go, and then I'll be discharged completely from hospital. But I would like to say to anyone out there who feels unwell or thinks there's nothing wrong with them, I thought I just had a chest infection. Obviously turned out to be something much more serious. And had it not been for the nagging of a family to go for this blood test, then things could have been a lot worse. So I advise anyone who feels unwell, isn't sure about something, to absolutely go and check it out, because it could save your life, and it certainly saved mine. And I've got nothing but good things to say about the NHS. They looked after me amazingly well, and spent a period of probably upwards of 80 days in hospital over between March and July, and nothing but good things to say about the care. But the underlying message here is, Reese, if anybody's out there feeling unwell and they think it could be serious, then absolutely go and get yourselves checked out, because like I said, it could save your life.
Next up is the fun Chris and Matt from the Forest All Over podcast, as they tell their story of getting to Wembley from overseas. Lovely to have both of you on. So basically, tell us how you ended up at Wembley and your experience of the day between you both.
Well, we didn't actually go together, did we, Chris? I mean, you can tell the story.
We did.
About that. No, we didn't, because I was in a very posh part of the ground.
Well, you had a different ticket to me, but we did go together. Like, do you want to tell them, just give a bit of background about where we were and what we were doing?
Background is that
Was you Club Wembley then, Matt?
Say again.
Was you Club Wembley?
I don't think so. Basically, I've got a mate who's part of the Prince's Trust, and he treated his staff and the business in Nottingham, which is this e-commerce thing, we're in the Prince's Suite, which isn't like a box. It's like, but it's that area directly below where they give they all lift the cup and behind the dugouts. And I was sort of at the back of that end, and I've got this really cool video of when they all came around and went up the steps. Managed to get I started shouting the Jed Spence song at Jed Spence and Keenan Davis. They're both doing that back at my phone. But I was very lucky that he offered me to go with his people in his company, that he, instead of doing a Christmas party, he said, look, if Forest get to Wembley, we'll have no Christmas party, but I'll get some seats in that area of the ground. And I jumped on the coattails of that. Sadly, Chris, I had to tell him.
Well, hang on. Just to give a bit of background here. So basically, Reese, up until this point, Matt and I were doing a podcast over the course of, we've done it for the last 4 years, but it was 2 years at this stage. Yeah. And Matt had come, I was living in Canada at the time, and Matt had come over to Canada, watched a Forest game with me. It was Leeds 2-0 one. We watched it with the Toronto Trickies, and then Matt went home, and then COVID hit, and then we started the podcast. And over the course of the next 2 years, we didn't see each other until I booked flights back to Ireland for a little bit of corporate work I was doing, but I knew the playoffs were on, so I'd kind of like extended my stay in hope that we'd make Wembley. Now, Matt had promised me his own ticket that he was going to buy and give to me.
Just season ticket at the City Ground.
Yeah.
But he gave it away to someone else. Am I right, Matt?
Yeah. Well,
so
because you had Chris has his fingers in about 1,000 pies. You can't,
come on.
And I was like, and I knew that you would lying to me about not being sorted because you want to keep them in your back pocket in case one doesn't work or something. And I know you do well, Chris.
No, but you're talking about my paranoia. Sorry, the sunlight is hitting me directly in my bald head here. But you're talking about my paranoia.
Just as I shone a light on your truth about pocketing tickets, the sun comes out and backs me up.
sorry about this, Reese, because we're going off tangent here. I didn't pocket any tickets. I had no ticket. I wanted to get one for me and my cousin from Ireland because I was there at the time and I wanted to go over. Matt had offered me a ticket and then he gave it away, and then I had to subsequently go and look for other ones. But either way, neither here nor there. We hadn't seen each other in 2 years, but we'd done 55 episodes of this podcast, Forest All Over podcast, and from different parts of the world, and that was kind of what the theme of the podcast was, being in different parts of the world, getting different people on from different parts of the world. We were going to meet up for Wembley.
Usually just me in Nottingham and him in Canada, but we did endeavour to get more on.
We got loads of people on. But anyway, the plan was to meet at Wembley. It would be the first time in all the episodes that we'd meet for Wembley, which was pretty cool. And to be fair to Matt, the semi-final, you actually did get me a ticket for that, didn't you? But I didn't take it.
Yeah.
And then I thought...
Wembley, Chris.
Yeah, let's get back to Wembley. Sorry. Anyway, I was staying at an old work colleagues of mine in London. Matt had come down and we were meeting up, and it was great because we were going to meet for the first time in 2 years. And when we finally met, Matt was with his dad. I was with my cousin, managed to get him a ticket. And Will, who's on our podcast as well, is a good friend of ours, was there too. And it was just a really nice moment because we forget that COVID had happened at that point and it was kind of coming to a close. And it was just a really nice moment because we were all together for the first time. I was the first time in 2 years seeing Matt in the flesh again after doing all these episodes.
It was cool. But you're missing out a crucial bit of what is... You're dipping into a nice thing between us, Chris. It is nice that we saw each other. But do you remember, we're kind of big fans, Reese, of Colin Frey. And I think you've had Frey on your podcast, haven't you?
Have, yeah.
Like, I'm an absolute fanboy of that guy. Like, it really takes me back to my childhood. I love him, and I love the way he commentates, and I love everything he says. Anyway, we bumped into him, and we like pestering him for selfies and stuff. And there was him and the BBC radio producer, and I think it was not Brian Laws. Well, Brian Laws was there, but it was also what's his name?
Steve Hodge.
Steve Hodge.
Yeah.
They couldn't believe that we got selfies with him, and then loads of other people started, and they felt like absolute celebrities. I was like, you guys are not. So we did that, and then we wiggled our way into the Novotel, Chris? Was it Novotel?
Well, we were in the hotel early, but then that suddenly became closed off. So do you know the hotel, Reese? Did you pass that hotel on the way to
the Novotel? And
well, I went to the Green Man pub, which is the other side of the ground. So on that day, I actually didn't go up Wembley Way, which is a little tiny bit of a regret. But because we went and we parked in the coach park, and then we went the other side of the ground to the Green Man. So no, I didn't. But carry on, guys. Anyway.
Well, Novotel was sort of had already been cordoned off as like the place for like Prutz was in there, Sky were in there, TV, but we'd snuck in. I didn't even realize we were sneaking in. We sort of ambled in.
We didn't. We ambled in early. We were there early before it was cordoned off. That was that. You're missing another bit of information about how we took a breakfast and you told me not to pay for it.
We took from the buffet. Took a free fry, but we knew that we couldn't leave because they started stopping letting people in. And it was great. It was the beginning of our Wembley day. As Chris says, we hadn't seen each other for years. We're doing this podcast, and we came together. A big group of us, and we also get into the sort of fancy exclusive hotel right on Wembley Way. We get a free fry up, we start drinking, and it's an absolute blast because there's like Prutz is over there. I think there was some other like ex-players and bits and bobs. We just had a great time, and then we stayed in there. We missed out on the fan park, I guess. We were hoping to do things like that, but we had a great time, the five of us, and then off we went. And as I said, I was exceptionally lucky because I had to say bye to Chris. I was right up in the posh part of Wembley. I think it's that Club Wembley, what you were saying, Reece?
Yeah, I believe so. Was your chairs all nice and padded?
Yeah. And we also got like a 3-course meal, like just inside. Like it was really fancy.
Couldn't wear a Forest jersey either. Remember, you weren't allowed to wear
we weren't allowed to wear
clothes.
That's true.
Okay.
Yeah.
People were though, but yeah, we abided by the rules. But there were so many more Forest fans than Huddersfield fans in there. And it was a great... I guess it lacked a bit of atmosphere, maybe, but I was so drunk and like high on us being in the final. I was still getting off on the penalty shootout with Samba.
Just pure playoff vibes.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I'm going to have to close this curtain. Keep going.
No, it's great, Chris. You're lit like a horror film. Reece, did you remember the... Is this just about Wembley you want us to talk about, or
why? What would you like to add?
I don't really want. It was more the whole playoff build-up and the tension.
You can add a bit of Sheffield United in there as well. Why not?
Yeah, well, I was one of those criminals that ran onto the pitch. I guess.
Well, I was with you, mate.
Yeah.
I went to the original playoffs against Sheffield United. My dad took me, and I would have been 11 or 12. And yeah, it haunted me up until that point of, obviously Forest doing Forest things. My introduction to it.
But it was tainted by that actual criminal who headbutted Billy Sharp, which no one thinks is any good. But the sad thing is until that year, pitch invasions have been a massive, joyful part of the culture. And even I ran on the pitch, and one of the people I bumped into straight away, and he was loving it, was what's his name? Marinakis' son, Matildas, is it?
Oh, Militardis, yeah.
Militardis. I call him Richie Rich. And he was there, and he was like hugging me and shaking my hand, and he was fine with everyone running on. So I was like, oh, it's grand. But that was that part of it. And then we ended up
we all separated, didn't we? Because everyone had tickets in different parts of the ground, which was kind of like, and you and your dad, me and my cousin Will.
Oh, you're talking about Wembley, yeah.
Sorry, talking about Wembley. So you're talking about the Sheffield United game. But I was, sorry, go on, Matt.
No, and then I guess to add, it's just this past week or so, I've been watching the Leeds and the Southampton game and stuff, and it brought so many memories back. It's almost, do you know what I mean? In hindsight, it's a little bit like a peak to get promoted, and then survival is staying in the Prem's just a complete addiction and a burden, though. Whereas the promotion is like a high. Yeah,
it's the way to go up into. I think if you ask most football fans now, if you gave them, look, here you can win the title, or you can go up via the playoffs, I think most football fans would probably say the playoffs, because you get out there at Wembley. You know, I was lucky to go to the FA Cup final on Saturday. And obviously, I drove down to the game, and to see like United fans and City fans coming by, I mean, it just brought back memories. And it's half the fun of going to Wembley, is that trip down, going to the services and seeing it packed out. Obviously, when we went full of Forest fans, seeing coaches and minibuses and cars and all sorts of people coming by. I think that's half the fun, isn't it? So it is definitely the best way to go up.
One thing I have a question for you, Reese, is like on the day of Wembley, I remember being relieved by the Sheffield United victory, because obviously the way it happened with the penalties and everything, and obviously our history in playoff semi-finals has been devastating, right back to that original Sheffield United game back in 2003, I think it was. So for me, when I was building up to go to Wembley with Matt and Will and my cousin and everyone, we were sat there in that little hotel, I was thinking in my head, I wasn't even thinking about getting to the Premier League. It's weird. I was just thinking, enjoy the day. We've got this far. We haven't done Wembley. We've never been to a playoff final. So just enjoy today. And it's weird. I wasn't even thinking about it till I was in the game, obviously, and then nervous, thinking, oh my gosh, we could do this. Do you know what I mean, Reese? Was that how you were?
We've got to kind of have that mentality, haven't you? Because you're not going to enjoy the day before then, are you, Chris? You've got to kind of have that mentality. Look, enjoy it. I'm going on like Neil Warnock now. Enjoy it, but enjoy it by being disciplined. So yeah, you've got to enjoy it up until and then it gets serious. And I mean, when the teams are coming out, you're thinking, oh God, this is going to be, this is going to be it. The good thing for me was, in a sense of nervousness, is I went to the England-Germany game the year before at Wembley, and I was so nervous that day because we was kind of a little bit in COVID then, so it wasn't a full house. It was my first, obviously, football game in probably about 18 months, and I was just so nervous because with England, it's like it was a knockout game. If you lose, then you've got to wait them for 2 years. At least you're kind of thinking with Forest, oh well, we can go again in August, kind of thing. So, and I thought we was a better team than Huddersfield, so I was not confident, but I thought if we got the first goal, which we did, we'd beat him, which is obviously what happened. So yeah, that was my take from it, really.
I was listening to TalkSport today as they were reflecting on Southampton Leeds, and apparently I missed the actual facts here. This is almost redundant, but it was something like 20-something of 20-something playoff finals have all been won by the first team who scores.
Yeah, because there's so much riding on it nowadays. The pressure, you never get, like, our game was terrible. My missus, God bless her, the day after was like, shall we watch the game back? And I was like, no, the game was terrible. Like,
game was horrible.
We'll watch from injury time and then the celebration, but and I'll watch the goal, but there's no chance of watching that game back. And to be fair, the game yesterday wasn't the best. Armstrong scored. Aside from that, Dan James hit the crossbar. There wasn't really much else happening. And it's once you've got something to hold, as we did, especially against Huddersfield, who was kind of a counter-attacking team. So if they had to kind of come out, you'd think with the pace we had with like Spence and Johnson that day, we could probably get in behind them. I know they had a couple of penalty shots, but they didn't even have a shot on target in the end, did they? So
no,
yeah.
It was
but actually, in terms of nerves, I think I don't know why, because I'm a big pessimist with Forest. But I always thought we were going to win it. And I kept checking with them. I was like, do you reckon we're going to win this? And people were going, yeah, it's definitely ours today. Whereas in the semi-final, it was like, I've not felt anxiety like that ever. Do you know what I mean? Especially that last part of extra time.
Yeah, the save from Samba with the studs was like,
oh, Jesus.
Yeah, and when reflecting on that, Keenan Davis dragged the ball away afterwards and dribbled up the pitch and created our own sort of attack.
Yeah,
and Jack Robinson trying to get a penalty and probably almost convincing the ref to give him one when he dived.
The snake.
But it was just, where were you sat for that?
So I was this for the semis.
Yeah.
So I was in lower. Yeah, I was in Lower Bridgeford, which was my season ticket at the time. So I was right behind the Samba save, and that was heart and mouth stuff. To be honest, when it went 2-1 to Sheffield United, I was like, yeah, they're going to win there. I think you'd probably ask the majority of Forest fans if they're going to be truthful, they'd probably say, yeah, it was just going to be typical Forest, but that team was a little bit different, wasn't it? So, I mean, just to obviously summarising, guys, just your memories and feelings when that final whistle blew, really.
Oh, well, all I can remember is Freed from Desire, and then everything that came back. I couldn't believe seeing. I've never been in a stadium like Wembley. I've been to the Emirates once to watch a friendly between like Scotland and Brazil. I think it was weird years ago. But I went to Wembley for the first. I always said I'm never going to Wembley till I get to see Forest there, and then obviously it happened. And my memories are when we scored the goal. I somehow ended up right at the front of the Prince's box and just going absolutely on the concourse. Almost had my clothes off. Do you know what I mean? I was like, with a bunch of other people swarming down there. I remember that being more profound than the final whistle. I think final whistle, I saw our players jubilant. I was a bit dazed and I just thought we're going to win it. And then it's the Freed from Desire, the whole blooming stadium vibrating and red scarves doing that. It was real big memory.
What about
for
you,
me?
Chris?
Yeah, sorry. For me, I nearly jumped over Matt there. Sorry, Matt. For me,
that wouldn't be like you.
Okay.
Sorry, Reece. I'm worse than him.
Apologise to me. No, for me, there was a couple of things that I remember clearly. The first was my cousin was next to me, and he's about a generation behind, so he started supporting Forest right when we were like losing to Blackpool in the playoffs and stuff, and Yeovil in the playoffs. So he's a fan his whole life, but he's about 15 years younger than me. So I turned to him, and I wasn't quite crying yet, but he was crying, and it made me go, "Oh my gosh!" Like it's as important to him as it is to me, and that was really special. And then there was a moment where, we lifted the trophy, and there was a song that was called "Changing." Everything's changing. And it's I've been here for too long. It's like a kind of a dance tune, but the lyrics sort of resonated with me, and I actually started to cry and well up a little bit. And then I messaged my wife and said, we did it. And she goes, I know. And there was this superstition I had that she had to hold on to this silly little Forest all over mug that I had. And I said to her, "Oh my gosh, did you hold on?" She goes, "I had it the whole time. I brought it with me when I was out because I knew it was your little superstition." And it was amazing. And then obviously I met up with a few people from New York and Toronto who'd come over for the game. And then Matt, ultimately we were both drunk somewhere in central London, and we didn't quite run into each other's arms, but we did celebrate together. So it was amazing. We were singing Leicester Square, Matt. You remember, with a group of Forest fans?
Yeah. Kept vomiting Forest fans all over London, just painting the town red still until the early hours. It was great. And we went to Soho, our old stomping ground, and kept the night red for as long as possible. Yeah, we did.
It was class.
It was definitely a big highlight of all my football experiences and all my other experiences in life as well. That.
Yeah, I think, like I mentioned to you earlier, I think that England-Germany game for me was like, this is going to be my pinnacle of supporting Forest in England. And so for Forest to do it less than 12 months later at Wembley was like, Jesus, I think of them.
Wow.
Yeah, very, very, very lucky that time. But thank you for coming on, guys. It was,
do you reckon we'll get to go again?
Enjoyable.
Next time we go will be a cup semi-final.
Well, let's hope it isn't a playoff final again, because I don't want to go back down. But yeah,
it will never be. We'll never be able to relive what we've gone through. No. It has to be something.
No, my partner said that the other day. Like, if we went down and say we got to the playoff final again, it just wouldn't be the same, would it?
Never
and to be honest, you know, I know they obviously have the FA Cup semi-finals at Wembley because of the finance it brings in, but I don't think that would be as special. And if it was the final, 100%. But you know, if it's a Carabao or the FA Cup final, that would be lovely. But fingers crossed one day.
Well, that will be the next visit we all have.
Yeah,
I'm sure of it.
And what's amazing is since Wembley, there's been loads of massive moments in the Premier League. Even though we've had two tough seasons, like beating Newcastle, beating Chelsea, beating Liverpool, all these massive, big moments in a different way that we've had as a result of that one big Wembley moment. And that's what I'm thankful for. Is like, that's why I wanted to go to the Premier League, to maybe beat Newcastle away, to maybe beat Man United at home, to maybe beat Liverpool at home.
To draw with Luton.
Shut up, come on.
Draw with Burnley at home.
Yeah. But, nice to meet you, Reece.
Yeah,
lovely to meet you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed it.
Pleasure.
Brilliant. Hopefully see you next season, guys. All right.
Yeah,
we'll see you in the pub at some point.
Yeah,
definitely.
Fingers crossed.
Cheers, thanks, Reece. Cheers.
Bye, Chris.
Bye, man.
Next up is Jamie Marriott. Jamie is a Forest fan who was a producer behind a brilliant Copper 90 Nottingham Forest documentary a few years back on the Sabri Lamouchi. If you haven't seen it, give it a watch. And is now a football photographer, which you can follow him on Instagram at football35mm. So football35mn. So plenty of plugs there for Jamie. He tells us how his support of Forest came about and his day at Wembley. Thanks for joining us, Jamie. I mean, so first of all, how did your support of Forest start?
Well, it's a little bit different because obviously I'm not from Nottingham. My dad's originally from the East Midlands. And then when he moved down to Portsmouth on the south coast, it was getting me in a Forest shirt as quickly as possible. And then going to primary school in like the early 90s, it was a case of like you'd had the Man Uniteds, Arsenals, etc., Liverpool's, and there's a couple of Pompey fans, but then I was always in a Forest shirt, Forest lunchbox, all of that kind of memorabilia. So it was ingrained from me from as early as I could remember.
At least in like the mid-90s, it was moderately successful, obviously getting a UEFA Cup, etc. So obviously on to, you know, the day at Wembley. First of all, I mean, how did you come by a ticket and just your overriding feelings and emotions of that whole day? Talk us through your day, mate.
Yeah, wild one. I think I came because I'm living in Newcastle at the moment. I came down the day before on the train. I remember upgrading myself to first class because I was like, Forest ain't going to get to Wembley in a long time. So I've just had like trying to rinse that as much as possible, take absolutely everything in, stayed at a mate's house in East London, and then got to, I think it was a pub around Marylebone Station at about like 9:30, and then started drinking with a few lads there, and then just kept going. And then got to Wembley probably an hour and a half before kickoff to soak up the atmosphere on Wembley Way. I remember it being blisteringly hot before kickoff. I managed to get a ticket through one of my mates, Callum Shaw, who had a friend who was unable to go. I don't have a season ticket nor a membership, so it was obviously very, very lucky that came about, because as we all know, they were absolute gold dust on the day. And I know there's people who were trying to beg, borrow and steal, and whether they're going to pay the big money in the club Wembley seats, any price, now knowing that getting promoted would have been worth it. Obviously you talk about even like the ticket prices nowadays, even at the City Ground, but I would have paid quite a bit of money to see Forest at Wembley. That was like my one and only dream that I couldn't control myself, was to see Forest at Wembley, and that happened, and we won, so even better.
Was you confident on the day that we would win, if you can remember?
I think I was just so nervous. I didn't really think about the game too much, and even yesterday watching the playoff the playoffs anyway, and everyone asked, "Are you confident? Are you confident?" It was just that we were on such a brilliant run from the league, and it was a case of I don't think we ever expected to lose. And obviously the Bournemouth game, when we did lose, it was almost a kind of a shock, and it probably needed that for us to go into the playoffs. So having said that, obviously we did lose to Sheffield United in the home leg technically, but can't really remember too many feelings whether I was confident going into it. It was just we just have to win no matter what way possible. I don't really care how it went in, and obviously through quite a lucky own goal by Colwell, and then you just take it, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying to people I've done clips with earlier, the games that nowadays are that bad because there's that much riding on it. I mean, the game yesterday wasn't really much to shout home about, surprisingly 1-0 again. Just finally, mate, just tell us the story with your dad and the famous bottle of wine.
Yeah, so my dad's loves a bit of a wine connoisseur, and he has quite a large collection. And I'd always ask, Dad, what's the best bottle of wine you've got in the fridge? And he's saying, it's this 1983 Chateau Margaux, and it's got to be for a special occasion. And he said, when Forest get promoted to the Premier League, we'll open it. And I remember this must have been about 20 years ago, even before I could drink. But it was a case of when we get back to the Premier League, we'll open up this bottle of wine. And every pre-season, I think we're all filled with the same optimism. I'm like, we're going to get promoted this season. We're going to go back to the Premier League. And obviously the realization by October or November, we're nah, it ain't happening again. So every year we kind of just had an on-running joke of when the season ended, it's next year we'll open up the bottle of wine. Next year we'll open it up. And when we did win the playoff final, my dad didn't get a ticket, unfortunately. So there were so many options. There were so many options about where to celebrate. Obviously, a lot of people went back to Nottingham. People were out in central London. It was just a case of what do you do with that aftermath of just taking in a first win for us at Wembley in God knows how many years. And I was instead of staying in London, I just got a train back to Portsmouth, and I was like, Dad, we've got to open up a bottle of wine. And I just remember opening it up and having a drink, and I was it was almost like the end of the story, and watching the playoff, obviously watching the game again, but not just watching the goal. And my dad said to me about how loud the final whistle was. And obviously when you're in it, you're a part of it, so you don't really take it on board. But watching that back, and I even watched it again this morning, I was like, fuck me, we were very, very loud. And just even hearing commentators going, yeah, probably one of the biggest outroars of emotion, which I would say that everybody who was there that day, and whether they weren't in pubs around Nottingham, the country or the world, people just had that outpour of emotion. But yeah, sat in the living room here, and I was like, yeah, this is what promotion's like, and actually being back in the Premier League. So there are. I don't think there's any other bottles that are for Europe or the Premier League or Champions League or whatever. That's probably not on the cards just yet. But it was kind of that moment of full circle of that. I had to come back here because my dad was pretty much forced me into supporting Nottingham Forest. So it was that moment of like the special moment that you come back to each other and you share that same passion with football. So yeah, it was a beautiful moment, and obviously winning it, it made it taste even sweeter. So incredible.
I mean, my final question is, how did the wine taste?
I mean, I thought it tasted all right. Like nice little red wine. I'm not the biggest wine connoisseur there is, but you could tell it was different to like anything I've ever had before. And yeah, almost like there wasn't enough, but obviously to savor it all was fantastic.
We did have a few other submissions to our pod, so I'll quickly read them out as well. This one's from Hannah with her story to Wembley. Me and my partner queued for 2 hours for a train from Nottingham to London. I think a lot of people did that, unfortunately. It was chaos, wasn't it? We realised we were going to struggle to get to Wembley on time for kickoff. My dad, like a white knight, offered us 2 seats in his car as we was driving down. We made it to Wembley just for kickoff and even in time for a pre-game pint. Really felt for the people still on the train queue, though. Awful organisation that day. Yeah, I mean, I remember seeing the queues and it was absolutely crazy. This one is from Reese Cooper. Me and my brother were at a wedding in Portugal on the Saturday for our cousin, who is also a massive Forest fan. At 12:30 a.m. the Sunday morning, we said our goodbyes to them all and got about 4 hours sleep before getting up for the plane that morning from Faro to Stansted, where Dad picked us up and we went straight to Wembley. Best weekend ever. And finally, our last submission was from Mark Davis. I flew in from Montreal for the weekend with my Canadian girlfriend to see the game, landed at Gatwick Saturday morning, flew back Monday, brought 2 tickets from a resale site, cost a fortune and crazy jet lag, but totally worth it. Next up are friends Jess Selby and Emma George. Jess and Emma have been going to games together for a number of years now, including 2 full seasons home and away under the days of Fawaz. Yeah, tough times. Between them both, they've done over 250 grounds, with most of those watching Forest, with Jess also hitting 1,000 games overall at Turf Moor in our last game. So, both of you, first of all, I must ask, when and why did you start going to games together? So take it away, one of you.
Oh, so I think the first one that comes to mind, so we'd kind of got to know each other going to some random away games. I think you were going with Kate at the time, and I think our friendship grew just cross paths. And I think it was Cardiff away between Christmas and New Year, which understandably nobody wanted to do on a Wednesday night. And me and you, I think, just went, oh yeah, we'll go. And yeah, I don't even know why, but oh God, who was it that scored the amazing goal?
Ollie Burke.
Ollie Burke, yeah, God, that was, yeah, we thought it was going to be a good day and it wasn't. And on the way home, they played the shocking Swansea playoff game for some reason on the way home when we lost in the playoffs on the way on the coach. So
just to tear up a bit more.
Oh God, we were sat there like, oh, this was a great season to watch, but why are you playing this? Like, we're on our way back from Wales as it is.
I mean, go on, Emma.
There's just, and obviously we met at a Stuart Pearce Q&A night. Reese, we obviously met you there as well that night as well. So that's how we kind of started to meet each other at football, and it just kind of grew from there.
Yeah, we did. We were always doing the away days that no one wanted to do. So Cardiff away on Tuesday night, Brentford away when it was absolutely Baltic. And we had to stop at Primark so Emma could buy 3 more layers of clothes because it was so bloody cold.
Preston when Stoke was closed.
Oh God, yeah, and Burnley away on a Tuesday night. The only reason we went to that is because the club offered free travel.
And then I got dumped the day before, so obviously that was a wonderful come around from being dumped.
Yeah, I've never known anyone try and cheer themselves up from being dumped by saying, "Oh, shall we go to Burnley?"
God. Yeah, I mean, obviously through them years, I mean, for you two, what was the bleakest time following Forest? And I mean, hand on heart, did you ever think that day at Wembley would ever come?
No, is the answer to did I think the day at Wembley had come. And, you know, Jess and I'm sure a lot of people have vouched that I always said I would never, ever want to go up automatically. It was always playoffs every year, always the playoffs. The bleakest point that screams to mind for me was Preston on a Tuesday night. the coach was about a quarter full. It was the derby at home with Oliveira on the Friday night come in. We were 1-0 down after about 3 minutes. The away end was about 100 people. It was raining. It was cold. It was dreadful. And I just remember on the way home, I was at one end of the back of the bus. Jess was at the other. And we'd sort of like just nod and be like a nod of, are you all right?
Nod of appreciation, yeah.
And I just remember getting home thinking, what are we going to do from here? That was my low point, definitely.
I've had a couple of low points. If we're going way back, the time under Megson, that was appalling. I mean, I was only a young teenager at that point, and that the day that it really turned, it was so toxic. It was absolutely awful to be in. Like, we were throwing stuff at him. There was barrages of abuse. But obviously, we're in a position where we could turn it around because of the league that we were in. We were lower, so we did actually have the opportunity where we knew we should be performing better, and that was it. Fawaz was most definitely bleak because it was the first time that had really something that bad had happened, where we were sort of questioning where the club was going to end up because of his tenure of Nunez. But the bleak moments for me, and I will just put it through there, was Houghton. That the period under Houghton at the beginning of that season, because we suddenly had supposed owners that did have our best interests at heart, supposedly. I mean, obviously we're now in a better place, but those first few games was just, where are we going to go from this? Because we have teetered on the edge of relegation over and over again under different ownerships, under different managers. How many more managers were we going to have? He was supposedly a manager that had experience getting us out. That was probably, and we do talk at the moment about some of the disconnection that we have with the club because they're making big decisions that in our heart of hearts we sort of knew were probably going to happen if we did become this Premier League club. But at the time, I remember thinking, I've never felt so separate from Forest. I was turning out matter of obligation rather than because I wanted to. And even your days out weren't that good because everyone else was feeling just as down as what we were at the time. Luckily, obviously, it ended when Cooper came in and it did turn around. But those first few matches at that beginning of the season, I remember sitting there thinking, my God, what is going to happen if this carries on? Because there was no way in my mind with Marinakis' drive that he was going to settle for us getting relegated under Houghton. So he could have gone or anything. So yeah, that was my bleak.
Yeah, I always remember back to the first game of that season at Coventry, where obviously because we'd come out of COVID and we'd not been to a game for what was about 18 months, I believe, possibly. Yeah, I think it was about 18 months. Everybody, of course, in that away end was really excited. We actually played pretty well that day for 75, 80 minutes.
Yeah.
And then in typical Forest fashion, 1-0 up, looking like we're going to get at least a decent point on the road. We capitulate and concede in the last minute and lose 2-1. And then I just kind of remember all us looking at each other like, why are we kind of bothering, you know what I mean? Because you get yourself that high to become that low again.
Yeah.
But incredibly, that is the season when, Steve Cooper come in and somehow, in untypical Forest fashion, we got after typical Forest fashion of blowing automatics in the end, we ended up nearly blowing the playoff semi-final, but winning on penalties and actually getting to Wembley. So that day did actually finally come. So just take us through your memories and feelings of that day as a whole, and even start, if you want, with the Sheffield United second leg at the end.
All I remember from, if I sort of talk specifically about the day at Wembley, obviously we all had a supporters bus, didn't we? We all got picked up. I never felt that day in doubt. I'm sure you guys are the same. We've been to football, and in the back of your mind, you think there's a doubt today, we're not going to do it, or you think today is our day. And I never ever questioned it that day. The motorway was full of Forest fans. Our bus was in, my dad whipped out a punnet of strawberries. I mean, who takes them to Wembley?
Wimbledon.
Normally it's a drink or whatever, but now punnet of strawberries. Green Man, everyone was in such high spirits. I didn't see anyone disgruntled. There was no arguing, no choice words, nothing. It was just all in all a great day, and it's a memory that I hold dear. I remember at full time just looking to one side, I had my dad, and obviously then the other side I had Reece and Jess. I just remember thinking, excuse my phrase, bloody hell, we've done it.
Yeah.
And I've waited so long for this moment, and it's here, and it felt like it had gone in 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's if we go back to the Sheffield United game, I mean, Sheffield United is they've already put ourselves in a bit of a, because as soon as we got them in the playoffs, it was like, oh my gosh, no, history is going to repeat itself here. And obviously, I hate to bring it with obviously Johnson as well playing for us. It was like, oh my God, this really is history trying to repeat. Away was absolutely fantastic. Again, never been to Sheffield United away where everyone was in such good spirits. There was no arguing, no fighting. Not even after the game. I think Forest fans just kept to themselves. Sheffield United fans kept to themselves. It's the first time I've really seen games between us two where there wasn't seriously any trouble outside of the ground, which was good to see because it is a celebration of achievements between two teams at the end of the day, even if you don't like each other. The home game, oh God, I think I still got emotional whiplash from that game. I remember thinking when Emma talks about the doubt was in the Sheffield United when we went into the extra time, because everything was saying to me, I've not seen Forest at Wembley. I'm never going to see Forest at Wembley. So in the next half an hour is going to really hurt. We were on complete level pegging terms. The next half hour is going to hurt me because it's never going to happen. And obviously we know what happened from there. And I'm not going to repeat anything that Emma said, but I felt so good going into Wembley. I did feel like we had the upper hand. I knew Huddersfield were a very, very good team, but I felt like we were well structured. I feel like, when people joked and said we didn't know how we lost out in the playoffs that season when the turnover happened from the goal difference. And then you remembered that Steve Cooper was in charge of Swansea at the time, and that's why it happened. I had the same feeling at Wembley. I felt like Cooper was going to set us up in a way that would just get us through it if he had to. And I remember just not sort of, it was like an out-of-body experience the whole game. It didn't sort of feel like you were there at any point. And then it was about a minute or so before the final whistle, and it was like, oh my God, we're actually doing this. This isn't just a pipe dream. This isn't just something I've thought about. We are actually going to go to the Premier League. And the 10 minutes after that final whistle, it was absolute euphoria. I mean, the dancing and the singing and just celebrating with the players on the pitch. I don't think there'll ever be a day like that. Obviously, we talk about the end of the season staying up and things like that. Wembley will always be its little entity on its own. We'll have good and bad days, but Wembley will be just in an own little category on its own. And we did it in such a fashion which, because it literally was bleak to unbelievable within the space of 9 months, it wouldn't happen like that again. We'll never do that again.
No.
Go on, Emma.
No, I was going to say, like I said to you recently today, if we, if God forbid went down and went to Wembley again through either the playoffs or, a cup final or whatever, it would never, ever be the same as that day. I remember us all on the way home like, oh my God, we're going to be on Match of the Day. The ground's going to be on FIFA. All these ridiculous things that you think of, and you're like, it just would not be the same as that day. Like that day is everything, and it will never, ever be beaten. Maybe a Champions League final, but...
I will add to it as well from that Emma said about like turning, and her dad was next to her and me and you and things like that. I mean, Reece, I've known you 15 years now. Emma, I've known you a decade easily. We've gone through, we talk about the bleak days. We went through that together. We were at those stupid grounds. We were doing those stupid away trips. We had our pick-me-up days, which, let's be fair, before Wembley, the best day we had was either getting promoted from League One or beating Derby with Ben Osborne. There was nothing else to chat about. So we'd gone through that together. So to share that with people that had been by your side on the good and the bad days, to actually have that experience with your family and friends was just unbelievable. I would not trade that for anything in the world. So,
yeah, I mean, so when Dwayne Holmes scuffed his cross at it, went for a goal kick, Adam was like, that's it. I was like, no, it isn't. I was like, still more minutes to play. Because obviously this was the days now, you can see the clock now with the injury time. And yeah, obviously when Horvath kicked that ball and it blew the final whistle, it was like what you said, Jess. It was just kind of like an out-of-body experience. I generally can't remember loads from that day just because it was so surreal, really. but yeah, yeah, it kind of nearly brings a tear to my eye talking about it now. It really does.
It does. I see things. Obviously, I've watched it back, the final whistle and that so many times. But there's actually a video from that just a fan had took of us just going to Free From Desire. It's only 30 seconds. And I've pinned it on Twitter or X. And whenever I watch it, that's the video that gets me, because it was so, obviously it wasn't done by Sky Sports. It was just so in the moment. I'm like, oh God.
My uncle, bless him, he is from Nottingham, Sports Forest, but he lives in Murfield now, near Huddersfield. So he takes his lad to Huddersfield. So they were in the other end, and bless him, he made my cousin sit and watch us celebrate and watch us lift the trophy, just so that he could feel it from the other side of the ground. And even he said, like, the noise was nothing that he'd ever heard. And bless my poor cousin having to sit through that.
At least your uncle and your nephew were decent Huddersfield fans rather than the idiots we have to deal with on Twitter. But that's another discussion. Next up is Callum and his younger brother Greg's Wembley story as told by them both. So the floor is yours, guys. Take it away.
All right, Sam. What do you want to do, Greg? Do you want me to start off? Should we get cracking?
Yeah, you can do, but like I'm getting it a little bit choppy at the mid here because it might be because I'm in Canada. But you can do, yeah, and I'll follow on from you, mate.
Okay, mate. So obviously, me and Greg have been Forest fans since we came out of the womb. Obviously, the playoff final came about. Greg lives in Canada. He's lived there for 18 years now, mate, I think, give or take.
It must be close, yeah. I moved over when I was 18 and I'm nearly turning 36, so I've nearly been there half my life now.
Yeah. Obviously, after the Sheffield United game, scramble for tickets. I've been to quite a few games that season. Luckily, by hook or by crook, managed to get myself a ticket. Got myself a ticket for the playoff final. Tried to get Greg a ticket through any way which possible. A friend of ours who used to work with our dad, actually, is a friend of mine as well, Martin Bradley. I went with to the majority of the games in the playoff season. Did have a ticket which was supposed to be filled by somebody else, but the closer it got to the final, it looked like he might not be able to go. And then on the day before the playoff final, I rang him and said, "How are we getting on with that ticket, Martin?" He said, "I think it's going to be free. What do you reckon?" So I said, "Right, perfect. Let me get hold of my brother." So rang Big Nose here, said, "Hey, what you saying about this? Can you get a flight in a bit?" He went, "What do you mean?" So I've got your ticket sorted out. Seriously? Yeah. Got your ticket. Right, okay. I'll ring you back. Half an hour later, right, I've got a flight booked. I'm going to be in Heathrow Sunday morning, about 11:30. Sound. So got down to Wembley, managed to get a parking space in a garage about, 10-minute walk away. And we've got a video of it, actually. Our cousin went to the game as well. He's got a video of us meeting up in a car park with Greg wheeling his suitcase through. And we finally got to Wembley.
It was I have to kind of thank my missus for it, actually, because once my brother called me and said, like, "I've got you a ticket," I just looked at her. I didn't say anything. And she just said, "He's got you a ticket, hasn't he?" And I was just like nodded, and she went straight away and booked me the flight and was like, "Right, you're going." I just chucked everything in the case. I was like leaving the next day. I was like, "All right, let's do it." A couple of days over there. It's I'd obviously looked before. We thought about trying to get tickets, and I'd ummed and ahed about just jumping on a flight and being around London or Wembley or even Nottingham. But this kind of just put the icing on the cake.
Sounds like you've got a good one there, Greg. So kind of how long was it from when you booked the flight, when Callum got your ticket, to when you booked the flight and had to travel to England?
It was same day. It was
day.
3 hours late. Yeah, the flight was 3 hours later that night. So he'd called me in the morning. I just had to confirm when my wife was up. She was like, "You went on the same day and it was 3 hours later." I was like, "All right." But yeah, he called me. It might have been we were talking maybe the day before or about it, and then I think it was that morning maybe. And I she went online, looked through Air Canada. There's only a couple of flights that go to the UK from where we are in Nova Scotia. So there was I think there was one flight to choose from. We just booked. He said, "Right, pack a bag. We're gonna take you to the airport." And I think within an hour, we we'd left the house just to get to the airport because I said, I'm just too excited. I got to go. We got to move.
So you basically, I'm guessing your energy levels with the jet lag were just pure Wembley vibes, I'm guessing.
Just pure adrenaline. I was down on the tube and getting towards London. I just had a little suitcase and I was just bopping around because I landed like the Sunday morning of the final. So London was already very busy. So I was just and I was obviously trying to meet my brother Callum. My cousin was around. I was trying to get in any pub I could, or everywhere was full. It was just buzzing of Forest fans. I didn't really know what to do with myself, to be honest. But I was just so excited and happy. I was just happy to be there.
Yeah, that's some dedication, mate. Callum, you obviously mentioned your dad is how you and Greg started going to games. Unfortunately, you told me that your dad passed away in 2015, so I'm sorry about that. But
okay,
you just want to talk about kind of yours and Greg's experience with him going to Forest early days, and also what your kind of dad watched with Forest, etc.
Absolutely, yeah. So I was lucky enough when I was 4. I went to the Zenith Data Systems final against Southampton. Saw Scott Gemmell score 2 absolute pearlers there. I was a junior red the day I was born, the same as Greg. We got enrolled in the old junior reds.
Yeah, me too.
And Forest was and is it's kind of part of our identity. Even now, like obviously we watched it with our dad whenever we could. Obviously Greg went to Canada, but he'd come over and we'd get tickets to the games. Even now, like on a Saturday or a Sunday, whenever, if Forest game's on, me and Greg will watch the game together via streaming. So we'll FaceTime each other and watch it together where we can, because it's just something that we do. My dad went to Munich for the '79 European Cup final. He followed Forest all over the place from basically when he was when he was a young adult. He took our mum with him to the final, which says kind of taking your bird to football is not the kind of dumb thing, but he did. And at the end of the game, obviously after the elation of Trevor Francis sticking the ball in the back of the net and the final whistle going, he just dropped to one knee and said, "Lynn, will you marry me?" Christ, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, of course, yeah, I'm sure, of course I'm sure. It was later actually included in Johnny Owen's part of his kind of gallery he did at the thing in Nottingham. I forget the name of the contemporary, whatever it's called. And he went to the 80 Cup final in Madrid. He went to the League Cup finals, FA Cup final, everything. And so we were lucky enough to kind of get to tag along with him. We went to the lows of League One, Walsall away, Yeovil away, Bournemouth away, getting beat there. Good grief. Yeah, we the highs and the lows. Obviously the playoff semis against Yeovil, we were there. And we obviously never got to make it to Wembley as the new one with him. But by hook or by crook, 7 years after he passed away, the playoff final day was 7 years after he passed away, and it just felt with Greg being able to get a ticket, and the day of his passing is actually coming up this week on Wednesday. It just felt like fate. It just felt like it was written in the stars. And obviously the day after, what we're in the 30th, was the day that Forest beat Malmo in the first European Cup final. So yeah, the stars aligned. It just felt like that. And kind of where I was sat in Wembley and where Greg was sat, because he sat a couple of rows away from me, we looked over at each other after that goal went in. It was just like, this is it. If people write fairy tales, this is the real deal. This is what it feels like and especially like where it was, it just, yeah, it's one of them feelings where football and family and everything else just kind of, it felt inevitable, and it was just absolutely fantastic.
Anything to add, Greg?
Well, I mean, we've probably got Forest to thank for me and Cal being here, to be honest. Because if they hadn't won that cup final, things could have gone a different way if our parents hadn't got engaged. But yeah, it was, and it's just touching on Cal's last point then, and feeling like fate is kind of one of those sort of fairy tale stories or storybook stories with getting over and being into the game and being able to see everything, but. It's almost like even at the game itself at Wembley, when they scored the goal, there was just a very strange feeling and thinking like, we're going to win. We're going to the Premier League. Like this is the time it's going to happen. And after all the lows of again watching games in League One, like when I had my season tickets, it was in those days because that was the age that I was sort of coming up and watching a lot of the games. But and with especially our father, and just the way we're growing up and watching him stick by the team, and it was always Forest regardless of what was happening. He through and through would continue just to support them and follow them anywhere. That's pretty much what made me have more of a love for Forest and football, because I think without that you can kind of fall off it and everything. And then just leading up and say getting to Wembley and being in that atmosphere and being able to look over and see your brother, and the whole dates coming up with anniversaries of passing and anniversaries of cup finals. It was just a special moment, and it was almost, it's cliche to say, but it's almost like saying you could almost feel him there with you supporting and stuff. So it just made it that much nicer.
Finally, to round off this special podcast, we have some archive footage of our interviews with Mark Dennison, who is the pitch side announcer at Forest, and also Colin Frey, who is the head commentator for Forest on BBC Radio Nottingham, as they talk about their day and experiences at Wembley.
I actually would go as far as saying I felt more confident we would win after that. I know you shouldn't judge it by the fans, but don't get me wrong, it was nice seeing Patrick Stewart give a talk. It was nice seeing them have their little clappers. But after, as soon as I heard them do that, I was like, we're going to be much louder than this. And you can tell we've just, if we're more up for it, that'll transcend down to the players. And hopefully that played a small part in us getting over the line. But you're right, it's interesting to see the sort of differing sides to things, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one thing there, I mean, the Huddersfield announcer wasn't there for the run through. And I remember the woman at Wembley was pulling her hair out and they couldn't get a hold of him. And I said, well, if he doesn't turn up, what happens then? Because do I have to do both? And she goes, no, you just do the Forest and we'll, Huddersfield might have to go without. And even then I was thinking, oh, that might be quite interesting, because obviously then they're definitely on the back foot, aren't they? But no, it was just an amazing, and even that day, now I think back, there was something in the air, something felt, and I didn't dare say it, I never said this at the time, something felt pretty good, and I didn't feel nervous really before that game. So it just, there's something that was telling me that it was going to be all right.
I was the same. I think it just felt, the whole build-up just felt like it was going our way. Like, I even remember getting the train up and it was just like full of Forest fans, barely any Huddersfields. It was like, okay. It was just little small things like that. Like, I mean, another one of superstitions, if I'm ever in the main stand, which is quite rare these days because obviously all Lower Bridgeford got moved over. So I go up at Bridgeford now. But I always used to go through turnstile number 7. And at Wembley, our turnstile for my block was number 7. And I was like, well. And you sort of see all these things like lined up like that. And it's sort of like, the only time I actually felt nervous in that game was probably the last 5 minutes, honestly. Like, I just felt like we've got this in the bag. Like, and then you see it and you're like shanking, everyone was celebrating clearances and we were on our knees just begging for the full-time whistle. That was when I felt nervous. But you're right. It did feel there was something like it aligned in our favour.
Yeah. See, I was lucky that day as well because my son and my daughter, because they're huge Forest fans, they came, so we all sat together. So to sit there and to go through it, enjoy the experience with them, that was amazing. And actually, my daughter and I have rewatched it a couple of times because every now and again she goes, "Oh, should we watch playoff final again?" And it's only, you mentioned there, the last 5 minutes, and you just think, God, if that had been given, that penalty shout and whatever. Not that I don't think it was, but sometimes they're given, aren't they?
I was just actually going to go on to post Wembley. When did you find out you were going to be doing the stuff on Market Square afterwards? I mean, that just must have been an amazing honour to get to do that as well.
Yeah, that was I think that was on the Monday morning. So we were driving up. We drove back. It took forever because obviously, as Christian mentioned, I think London was like 90% Forest fans. So getting up the M1 was that was a long night. So got back home, and I knew I was on the radio on Monday morning, and then there was kind of a rumor that Forest would do like some kind of not a parade, but they would appear in our Market Square, and someone at the Beeb said, and rightly said, we should go and do the show from there. But that's where working for both places works really nicely. So initially we were just going to do the radio show from Slab Square, and then I bumped into someone that works at Forest, and he said, well, come up on the balcony. So this is the extent of BBC technology. So I literally, for all the speeches, including Steve Cook and the F-bomb, I just had the microphone against the speak. I was lying on the balcony of Market Square next to a speaker, and I just put the microphone next to the speaker so people listening could enjoy the F-bomb in its full glory. But no, that was amazing.
Do you know, everyone lauds Stephen Reid and the picture of him on the coach with about 8 cans and a cigar in his mouth on the bus. But how worse for wear were the players?
They stank. Yeah, they stank because they hadn't. I don't think they changed. So all I could smell that day was sweat and booze, and I was thinking actually it probably doesn't take that much for football players to get drunk, does it? Because they're not used to it. So if they'd had a couple of cans at Wembley, a couple more on the coach, hadn't really slept, it's no wonder they were hanging, because they're just not used to it, because they just don't drink, do they? So
Keenan Davis must have had too many WKDs, because he nearly get his kit off in Market Square. If I remember, I think all the ladies were egging him on as well.
Yeah.
I mean, there are a lot of big moments that year. Obviously, you mentioned the second half at Barnsley. There's Bristol City as well. The chaos that final minute. There was winning away at Millwall in the 93rd minute, and Graben popped up. That was absolutely hammering West Brom at home on Easter Monday, the same day Derby went down. There were lots of little flashpoints during the season where it looked like we might do it. And then after 120 torturous minutes at the City grounds, including some heroic antics from Reece Samba, you finally got your wish of going to Wembley, which became like a long-running theme, I believe. And obviously everyone else apparently seemed to, but you were sort of just left there like watching, like all dressed up with nowhere to go. So how did it feel like when Forest finally got there, that you could actually, go there in a professional capacity with the club?
Yeah, just incredible. Just it had been so long in coming, and not just for me. I mean, I suppose I was the sort of the embodiment of it, because I'd been there for donkey's years, but that just proved how long it had been since Forest were at Wembley. So there's an entire generation of Forest fans who've never seen their team play at Wembley, and that, I think, not only that season and then the following season as well. I think one of the highs for me was to see so many of those moments, those first in a generation moments. A first quarter final in a generation in the FA Cup, the following season a first semi-final in the League Cup in a generation, and obviously Wembley, and then being in the Premier League for the first time in a generation, and all of those things, just and all of them have just brought such joy, and I think that's the biggest thing of the actual Wembley experience for me, was just seeing the joy on 37,500, however many it was, Forest fans at that end of the stadium. That sort of half an hour after the final whistle was just unbridled joy and passion, and obviously the players were part of it as well, and Steve Cooper and his coaching staff as well. And it was a fantastic day. But to go back to the feeling of actually getting there, I don't think I could quite believe it, because there'd been other occasions where, we mentioned the Oval playoff before. Forest should have got there that year. I'm going into the second leg thinking, going to get to Wembley because we're 2-0 up from the first leg, and we're going to score a couple of goals tonight, and that means the Oval are going to have to score 5. They'll never do that. So, we got close, Paul Hart's team at Sheffield United was close, and football's football, isn't it? And it's all ifs and buts and maybes. But I'm going way back now. But I maintain that if Sheffield United don't get a goal back as quickly as they did with that free kick, just as soon as Forest had gone 2 ahead on aggregate, on 2-0 up on the night, Sheffield, if they could just hold the lead for another 5-10 minutes, then I'm convinced they'd have got to Wembley that year as well. So they'd been close, but then it just, I suppose, naturally, like all Forest fans, I'm sure, guys your age, we're all thinking probably, are we ever going to get to Wembley? Is there ever going to be some success? And, finally there was, and Wembley itself turned into not the best game, but who cares? Great day, fantastic day. It's a wonderful place to win. It's a horrendous place to lose. And thankfully Forest came out on the right side of it.
I mean, I think we've all got our opinion on that day, like of what we thought. I mean, Christian mentioned to Mark Dennison that as soon as Patrick Stewart appeared on the screen for Huddersfield to read a poem, he knew we would win. Did you have the same confidence, Colin?
We've been way before that, Adam. Don't worry about that.
Confidence. I think I was confident that they'd win. I think in as much as you can ever be, because you just never know. Mansfield had gone the previous day, hadn't they? And
yeah, they got walloped.
Had frozen. And had just had one of those Wembley nightmares, and you just don't know. Notts County during COVID had got to the playoff final and had played in an empty Wembley, which I'm sure was not a great experience at all. And they'd had a similar occurrence against Harrogate in their playoff final, where they were probably favourites going in, but you just never know what Wembley's going to do, because these players have not played there before. You just don't know what that occasion is, and that ground and that atmosphere and that stadium is going to do to teams. Putting all that aside, I was confident that if you could put all that aside, if it was just a football match, that Forest had done the hard bit by seeing off Sheffield United. I thought of the 4 teams in the playoffs, Sheffield United were going to be the most difficult, and so having dispatched them, I was pretty confident against Huddersfield. Obviously it was very close. Obviously, there were some heart-in-mouth moments with the potential penalties, but it all came out all right in the end. And I think the other thing that really made me confident, and this is just sort of on the day, the sight of Wembley Way in the morning and getting on towards kickoff just being red. It was a question of where's all the Huddersfield fans? It was just a sea of red and white, and it was almost like a home game. It was almost like turning up over Trent Bridge, but walking up Wembley Way, and incredible atmosphere outside the ground, even better inside it. Unbelievable build up with Forest playing their standard pre-match video on the big screens, and Mull of Kintyre being belted out by 37,000 people. It was just everything about the day was absolutely fantastic, except for the game, which was pretty awful, and nobody cares.
Yeah, I was very much that. I felt we was a better side than Huddersfield. I was just concerned if we kind of went behind, because they were like a bit of a defensive side, weren't they? So when we got that first goal, I know it was an absolutely terrible goal, but you take it, that kind of made me a bit less nervous, because I thought they've got to kind of come out now, Huddersfield, and we could maybe exploit, but the game was that bad it didn't come to that. But I know I always laugh at my partner said the day after when we got back from Wembley, she's like, do you want to rewatch the game? I was like, no. I was like, I watched all the celebrations and that, but I says the game was terrible. And
yeah, watch the aftermath. That was the best bit.
Yeah, but they always are now, aren't they? Playoff games, the money in that on the line's ridiculous, and it does play on the players' mind. Thank you to everyone to listening to the podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it. We'll be back this Sunday with a big quiz of the season, with a variation of quizzes for you to enjoy. So hopefully you can play along, because we'll be doing that live. Also, we're doing a charity/podcast game at Ilkeston Town Football Club on Saturday. Entry's free, so if you want to come along and watch and have a beer, that would be brilliant. But thank you once again, and come on, you Reds.